My name is Patricia. My daughter Victoria is 45 years old. She's part of a somewhat untraditional family in that her dad and I have been apart for many years, and Victoria is an only child, so to some extent on the ground it's always been just Victoria and me. We're reaching the stage where as parents we're in our 70s and Victoria is in her mid-40s, and really facing the reality that for me personally I'm not going to be around forever, and so we started looking at what do we need to do with and for Victoria so that there's some kind of continuity and structure for her after we're gone. Victoria was living in a rented apartment where she'd been for about 13 years, and the house that apartment was in was sold. And we began to realize that there was a vulnerability for her in terms of her living arrangements on the long term. So 7 years ago, we actually purchased in trust for her a small condo so that she would always have a place that was hers and that it would fit her in terms of her needs. So, I mean, although she's very high functioning, she's also quite vulnerable. We wanted her to have some security in a home of her choosing. And once starting on that process, it got us looking and reviewing at everything we'd done. So we reviewed wills and that kind of thing, and when we started talking to our lawyer about how to formalize a kind of structure with some accountability for the future, we started looking at microboard as an interesting kind of framework or option for doing that. And what we were looking for is some continuity in the future in terms of who will know Victoria, who will care about Victoria, who will be able to act in her best interest in many ways, and who will be responsible for continuity as people move on in our lives. And with a board structure like this one, there's a provision that as people need to go, part of their accountability or responsibility is to find others to replace them. Right now we have 7 people, and Victoria's dad and stepmother and I sit on the board, and as well as that we have a lawyer who happens to be a family member, a husband of a niece, and we have a financial person who happens to be the husband of a previous support worker of Victoria, and that woman herself, who knows Victoria really well and what she needs, sits on that. And our latest addition is someone who's really boots on the ground with Victoria, who through some community programming has the opportunity to see her and interact with her on a weekly basis. So she knows her, she cares about her. She's in a really good position to kind of evaluate how things are going and if there are any red flags that need to be looked at. Victoria's dad and stepmother and I are really interim on the board, and part of our role is to have the vision and to do some mentoring and training for the future. And as part of this 10-year plan I always talk about, I think we're in about year 8, so my goal is in the next 2 years, those people who sit on the board and maybe a couple of others will have taken over some of the things that we currently do. I'll just give you one example. We have some funding for some support workers. One of our support workers is an employee, so there's a payroll that needs to be done. And right now that's taken care of by Victoria's dad. In future, somebody else needs to know how to do that and some of the other financial things that relate to her condo. Okay, so we're in the process of training and then hopefully handing over little bit. From a legal and paper point of view, we all have wills that have discretionary or Henson trusts in them. And we worked with the same lawyer, even though we live in many different places, to do that, so that all of the wills mesh in terms of setting up trusts for Victoria in her best interest, and trusts that won't interfere in any way with the provincial funding she gets with ODSP. And trusts that have commonalities in terms of future trustees. So while we're still alive and competent, we are Victoria's trustees, but we already have contingent trustees who in fact sit on our microboard. And so as things change for us as her parents, they'll be able to take over and work in her best interest. We also have a lawyer and a financial advisor who were hand-picked. And if I think about what we tend to do as adults, parents, we have lawyers, we have financial advisors. They're usually our generation, right? And those people will be gone in the same way that I would be gone. So we've looked and found resource people who are Victoria's generation, and made a point of having Victoria get to know them and vice versa. So they're there to advise our microboard as well. My biggest challenge is how do we get the people in Victoria's life on a much more kind of personal, on-the-ground, day-to-day level, who know her and will be able to do some of the things. So I still struggle with that, and to some extent it's hard to let go of control, to let other people be involved. So while people are saying, wow, I can't believe what you've done, my tendency is still to think, wow, you don't have any idea how much there is left to do. So that's the perfectionist, I guess, in me. And that's the mother who worries in me.